Thank you very much. I was just looking at all the birds who are killed by windmills. Just horrible. I like the little birds. Okay, we'll start with Dr. McBride. We were told the IRA Inflation Adjustment Act was a deficit-reducing bill. I think the Republicans knew all along that was questionable. It went from reducing the deficit by billions of dollars to increasing the deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars. Why is the CBO now reversing course on the estimated cost of the Inflation Reduction Act?
Well, they haven't released a complete reanalysis of the Inflation Reduction Act. I would love it if they did. We've been pushing for that ever since enactment of the bill in 2022 because there were, as I mentioned in my testimony, a lot of questions right out of the gate about the cost of the credits. And over time, we've gotten, every element of the IRA actually has a lot of uncertainty about it. A lot of novel stuff going on in that legislation. I can talk at great length about the various things involved in the corporate alternative minimum tax, the buyback tax, where again that's where the revenue was supposed to be raised along with the drug pricing provision. The best indication we have is that the corporate alternative minimum tax and the buyback tax in particular are so complicated and so difficult to implement. They actually just didn't implement them. The IRS allowed taxpayers to not pay the tax for the first 2 years after enactment. That doesn't mean they're off the hook. It means that they haven't yet finalized the regulations actually to implement the corporate alternative minimum tax in particular. It's turned out to be so complicated to sort out. And so this is the big revenue raiser in the bill, particularly over the first few years and in the first decade, the corporate alternative minimum tax. It's not raising revenue, apparently, just yet. So what we have is very little revenue coming in the door, but a tremendous amount going out the door, tremendous amount of spending going out the door in the form of these credits. And that's been the general dynamic of this legislation ever since it was enacted. So yes, we do need a complete reanalysis of the bill. We have not gotten it from the CBO. We are getting bits and pieces about it over time, and as part of the legislation going through the House now, we are getting a rescoring of the credits in particular, and that's showing that, yes, there is a lot of money that is going out the door with these credits. The current House bill rolls them back and saves about $515 billion over a decade from that measure alone.
Thank you. I hate it when legislators use the tax code to try to influence public policy. They ought to just, put appropriations out there rather than try to play around with this. Nevertheless, it does bother me over time that the tax code does there are provisions that seem to benefit the ultra-wealthy at the expense of the common man. Could you describe who's largely getting the benefits of these tax credits in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act? Who's paying the price here? Who's paying the price and who's getting their taxes reduced? Mr. McBride, Dr. McBride.
Sure. Well, as we discussed in our testimonies here, and it's very clear in both just anecdotal evidence. You look around, who's buying solar panels, who's buying electric vehicles. Those are high-income people, and you can see that with your own eyes. The data and the studies support that, and for that matter, a lot of the credits go to businesses. And again, this is an area of uncertainty. We have tried to identify what types of businesses exactly, and honestly, it's not very clear, but that I mentioned the statistic in my testimony that the largest corporations, I believe that's those with more than $25 billion in revenues, receive more than half of the major businesses.
So largely, this is a tax cut for the rich, you think?
That's what it looks like to me.
I think
yes.
so. Now I'm also on time, so I got to go quick to Mr. Lieberman. these energy subsidies are responsible for enormous cost. Overall, insofar as it drives up cost, who is going to pay the price for that? Is this another thing that's kind of a regressive tax on the average guy, or how would you describe who's paying the price for this?
There's almost nothing in the Inflation Reduction Act that's geared towards lowering energy prices. So energy prices will go up. One thing I would add, for example, is that there's a lot of provisions in there geared towards discouraging use of natural gas and making homes all electric. Well, natural gas is 3 times cheaper than electricity on a per unit energy basis. So it's one example where climate policy is very much at odds with pro-consumer policy.
Well, if you're a well-off person, I suppose it doesn't matter. It only affects the average guy. Thank myself. Now we're calling on here Mr. Christomorthy.